Hello, hello, hello. This is a Soul Short broadcasting live from Sfat in Israel. So, the most important message from today is unfortunately, we're seeing what seems to be, should be peaceful protests. Nothing wrong with people protesting a government. But what's really happening is there's a big lie that's being promoted. And I'm not being political, but there's an important understanding of what's going on in reality. You know, if a person doesn't understand reality, Hitler said, lucky for leaders that people don't think. So the Germans didn't think, and because they didn't think, they ended up becoming mass murderers. So it's very important for people to think. And thinking is always distinguishing, looking at the truth. And so the question, of course, is the protesters against what's called judicial reform, are they really for democracy as they claim, or are they actually just violent? And it's a very important principle. It's called, do the means justify the end? Now, sometimes they do. For example, if you're going to see one person kill another person, so in order to prevent that, you have to kill the person. That's one of the laws of the Torah. The same Torah that says don't murder says you have to murder somebody in order to prevent an unnecessary death. On the other hand, if you're trying to educate someone, tell them, I don't know, how to become more religious, the means to use a violent mean is not right, because they have freedom of choice and you have to use their choice. And so what we've discovered since Obama became, and he was brought up in basically a radical Muslim country, and he was educated by radicals, so there's a lot of radicalism in the way he did things. Never mind if what he did was right or not, but the way he did it was, okay, this is right, we can force people into this. And in fact, many people for thousands of years think that that's the correct way. One of the unique things of democracy is really going against that principle and saying, no, we don't force people. We give people, in the right context, as mentioned, a certain amount of liberty over their life. And so what's really going on in Israel is very important to understand, is that the judicial system became part of the terrorists. They became part of the radicals. In other words, they overstepped their boundaries. What do they say? A little bit of power makes people a little corrupt. A lot of power makes people a lot corrupt. And so one has to understand the history of the judicial system in Israel. The history is very simple. It didn't really have a real strong role. In Israel, the role of the judiciary was not that strong because the Knesset was the body that made the laws. That's kind of how the system functioned. A little similar to America, that the government makes the laws, but the role of the Supreme Court is kind of to uphold the laws. Well, some prime ministers, Menachem Begin notably, had this interesting idea, well, we need to copy America. And so they gave much more power to the Supreme Court. And then there was somebody that came up with another idea called the Basic Constitution. And then it was very, very amorphous, called human rights. So the Supreme Court was able to step in and say, oh, we're protecting human rights, where in actual fact, they were just using their position to abuse power, to do whatever they want, deciding what a prime minister can do, what a prime minister cannot do. And so getting it back to the real democracy, which is that you elect a Knesset, and the Knesset decides what is the law, is the real democracy. And the people that are violently protesting, it's disgusting to see people, normal people, going into violence. What they're really doing is they're just trying to get their team members in power. It has nothing to do with democracy. The real democracy is that the elected people, which the Knesset represents the majority of the elected officials, I mean, they were elected by the majority, they are the ones that, both based on the Constitution of Israel as well as democracy, get to make the laws. So it's important to understand that we must never be radicals. We must never use violence. Of course, in certain circumstances, a war where there's an aggressor that's going to kill, you have to use violence, or ideally have an army that they're afraid to attack. But to use violence and to say that you are there for democracy, you are the peaceful person, is obviously a lie. It's important for people to be able to distinguish between good and evil, and good uses words and evil uses swords. So I hope that we will all be on the side of good. We can respect one another, love one another, and use words and not swords. Thank you.